Hi, this is Jen coming to you from the South Country Library. This year we can't have scary stories in the dark in person, so I thought we'd do it virtually. I'm in the scariest room of my house. It's a crawl space. It's very creepy. It's dark and it stretches on beyond. I'm sitting right by the entrance because I'm a little freaked out just even crawling in here. And it's not completely dark because otherwise you wouldn't be able to see me. This program is intended for second through fifth graders, and even within that age range, if you know you're sensitive or get scared easily or have nightmares, then this might not be the program for you. Just a heads up. So our first story is called Dark, Dark. In a dark, dark wood, there was a dark, dark path, and down that dark, dark path, there was a dark, dark house. And in that dark, dark house, there was a dark, dark hall. And down that dark, dark hall, there was a dark, dark room. And in that dark, dark room, there was a dark, dark cupboard. And in that dark, dark cupboard, there's a ghost! So let's break the tension a little bit with a scary, not scary, a bad joke. Why doesn't Dracula have any friends? Because he's a pain in the neck. Why didn't the skeleton go to the dance? Because he had no body to go with. Okay, let's do our next story. The next story is called Tilly. Now, I've worked with lots of kids, and I've met kids who are difficult, or bullies, or smart alecks, or troublemakers, but none of them are really bad. But Tilly, I don't know what was wrong with Tilly. Tilly was just, I hate to say it, but Tilly was just rotten. Her parents were good people and they took really good care of her. They took her to doctors and psychologists and psychiatrists, and none of them could figure out what was wrong. At school, she had no friends because anyone tried to get close to her or be nice to her, she would bite and scratch and spit at them. Her teachers were kind and tried their best with her, but they just couldn't help. And at home, Tilly was the worst. She would slap her baby brother. She would do terrible things to annoy her mother. She broke everything she could lay her hands on. They had no pets anymore. Even the neighborhood dogs and cats knew to stay far away because Tilly would kick them. Or worse. One day, Tilly was particularly awfully rotten. She did everything in her power to annoy her mother. She locked her brother in the closet. She smeared peanut butter on the dining room windows. She broke her brother's favorite toy. She kicked a hole in her window. Her mother had had enough. Tilly, don't you know that boogeymen come and get rotten children like you? And then she said, "Oh, I'm sorry, Tilly, I didn't mean that." And Tilly said, "What? Let the boogeyman come and get me. I'd like to see him try." And her mother said, "Oh, Tilly, you don't mean that. Don't say such things." And Tilly said, "Let him come. I'll spit in his eye." "Tilly, that's a terrible thing to say. Go to your room." So Tilly stomped up the 5 steps to her room and slammed the door. She had a room separate from the rest of the house, up a short flight of steps, and her mother and father and baby brother had a room on the other side of the house. And she screamed and she cried and she kicked holes in the wall and she broke even more toys and tried to rip her clothes and cried and screamed, and finally she fell into bed exhausted. A while later she woke up and it was dark outside and the house was very quiet and still, like it is after your parents go to bed. So Tilly sat up and looked around and wondered what time it was, when suddenly she thought she heard a voice. She thought she heard someone saying, "Tilly, I'm on the first step, and I'm coming to get you." "Who is that? Who's there?" Tilly listened hard. But then she could hear nothing. Only the silence rang in her ears. So she laid back down and tossed and turned and tried to go back to sleep. But a few minutes later she heard, "Tilly, I'm on the second step, and I'm coming to get you." "Who is that? Mom! Mom! Come here!" But because her house was on the far side of the house, because her room was on the far side of the house, her mother couldn't hear her, and no one answered. Tilly didn't know what to do, so she listened again for the voice, but didn't hear anything. She shivered, but tried to go back to sleep. And then the voice came again. "Tilly, I'm on the third step, and I'm coming to get you." "Dad! Dad, come quick!" But her room on the other side of the house was too far for her parents to hear, and nobody answered, and Tilly was too scared to get out of bed. She pulled the covers tight around her, and then the voice came again. "Tilly, I'm on the fourth step, and I'm coming to get you." "Help!" Tilly screamed. "Help!" And she dove under the covers. And all was quiet for a minute. No one had heard her, so no one came. And then the voice came again. "Tilly, I'm on the fifth step, and I'm coming to get you." Tilly burrowed under her covers to the bottom of her bed, hoping that the blankets could protect her. And then she heard a scratching at the door. "Tilly, I'm at your doorway, and I'm coming to get you." Tilly sat up, turned on the light, and then dove back under her covers. She didn't know what else to do to protect herself. Then she heard the creak of her door and soft footsteps across the floor. That stopped at her bedside, and the voice said, "Tilly, I'm at your bedside, and I'm coming to get you." And Tilly covered her eyes under the bed sheets and listened hard. Would they go away? "Tilly, gotcha!" And that's the story of Tilly. Let's do some more jokes. Let's say, what do witches use on their hair? Scare spray. What do ghosts use in their hair? Shampoo. Let's do one last story together. And this is called The Ghost of the One Black Eye. Once there was a young man who was driving to see his grandparents, and he is out in the country, and all of a sudden his car broke down in the middle of nowhere. It was not an area that he was very familiar with, and the houses were far apart. He couldn't get any reception on his cell phone, so that was no use. So he got out of his car, looked down the road a little bit to see if there was a house that could maybe there were people that could help him. So he spotted a house up ahead, so he started to walk to it. It didn't look very promising. It was kind of a decrepit house, and he hoped that somebody still lived there. And then it started raining with all his bad luck, and so he dashed up to the house, climbed on the porch, and knocked on the door. Nobody answered. He knocked again, and still no answer. But then the door on its own started to slowly creak open. Well, being that it was pouring outside, he decided he would just go inside, even if no one lived there, just to get out of the rain. So he walked inside, and he couldn't tell if someone lived there or not. I mean, it looked kind of shabby, but maybe somebody still lived there. So he sat down on this couch, and because he was wet and cold and tired, he eventually drifted off to sleep. He startled awake a few minutes later and realized that someone was standing in front of them. It was a man, and he had a very pale, pale face and very white, white hair. And he said, "I am the ghost of the one black eye." And the young man looked, and sure enough, the ghost had one black eye. The man was terrified. He couldn't even squeak out any words when suddenly a woman appeared beside the man, and she had long white, white hair, and her skin was white, white with a white, white dress, and she said in a terrible voice, "I am the ghost of the one black eye." And he looked, and sure enough, she had one black eye. He was terrified, but the ghosts were blocking his way to the door, and he didn't know what to do, when all of a sudden 2 young children appeared on either side of the man and the woman, and they had white, white hair and white, white skin and white, white clothes. And the 2 children said, "We are the ghost of the one black eye." And he looked at the children, and sure enough, each one had one black eye. And suddenly there appeared a teenage woman, and she had long white hair and white, white skin and a white, white dress. And she moaned, "I am the ghost of the one black eye." And he looked, and sure enough, she had one black eye. He was frozen with terror and didn't know what to do, when all of a sudden the ghosts started chanting together, "We are the ghost of the one black eye! We are the ghost of the one black eye! We are the ghost of the one black eye!" And all of a sudden the kitchen door slammed open, and out came an old lady, and she said, "If you don't all shut up, you'll all be the ghost of the 2 black eyes!" And that's the story of Ghost with One Black Eye. So thank you for joining me tonight. I hope this helped put you in the Halloween mood, one of my favorite holidays, Halloween. And if you are dressing up in a costume on Halloween and want a safe place to trick or treat, we'll have treats at the desks throughout the library. So take care, and thank you for joining me.